Let's do it live.
It seemed off balance. I'm
Yeah, what's
obsessed
off?
with that flag line right there.
Is it
It's
your
not
flags
level.
off or your cameras off? I feel like my
It's
teeth
a little,
are gonna pour out the
little
side
bit
of my.
of both. Actually, you know what it is? I can see that my camera is actually a half tilt, but it's workable. How is our wonderful friends that are piling in all at once?
Wow, we're getting some. That's coming in quick, isn't it?
Dobry večer, everybody. Live from Kiev and Dnipro. We have the voices from the front and the wiretap live with you. And, Shaun, we were hanging out eating cherries just yesterday, it seems like.
Yeah, it's good, wasn't it? You come down to Dnipro. We got some footage done with Dimko and
Dimko!
Dimko, and we got some
Ah,
interview wrapped with him. Where you going now? We're doing good, Adam. Thank you. We're waiting for the big hit. Obviously, we know it's coming. We literally had Oreshnik warning,
it's
nothing.
time to show off our books.
Yeah, mine's not here actually.
I've been wanting to meet, just like you, I've been wanting to meet Dimko for a long time. We would have good texts on Signal and Twitter to boost each other. And he's
Well,
just a
he's very
great guy.
knowledgeable.
What a great spirit, though, too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what shocked me more. I mean, he's such a nice guy, but
Mm-hmm.
the way he's very good communicator, absolutely
Mm-hmm.
knows his shit. But the matter at hand of industrial, quantity killing,
Mm-hmm.
and the way he talks about it, it is what we're sort of used to. But soldiers put on airs and graces for interviews. Well, this was this was how it is.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a game. This is a war. We don't get second place in this. We've got to win. And if you watch the interview, you'll hear Dimko pretty much look at this for what it is, industrial quantity killing to win and survive. So yeah, I mean, I was trying not, when you do the interview, you're trying not to get too interested in it, because you want to sort of, you have to keep an eye on the questions and you have to listen to what he's saying. But I was engrossed into what he was
Yeah,
saying about
exactly.
a lot of the where we sit currently, and he knows because he's right at the coalface.
Yeah, and he's actually his actual appointment or role is to communicate with us, to share that knowledge and experience so that we can do good, useful work. Let me pull up our note list here. Sorry,
Oh, yeah.
everybody. I went to grab food as our brother Shaun had already eaten. I
You had a
assume.
barbecue
I hope.
tonight.
I had nothing but my morning hot dog and coffee hours and hours and hours ago, so I went to go get me some nice plov. I always
Obviously
go to my
with
Uzbek brothers when I want to eat healthy. I either go to Mama or I go to my Uzbeks, and I'm
well,
guaranteed it's going to be healthy.
I'm spoiled because Larissa made a shashlik, had it marinate in the fridge, flash.
Okay, well, you were so good
So
to me. I
yeah,
can't complain that it wasn't night before yesterday that we had shashlik because we
have you met
didn't.
Loki?
Now, for those who don't know, Loki, our wonderful Loki, is amazing. He's a beautiful cat. And it was great to, like, when I went to fall asleep, actually right behind where Shaun's sitting right now. This
Yeah,
big giant cat comes and just lays on my side, and as long as my torso, and just a playful, awesome 8-month-old. So
Mancoon. Yeah,
yeah,
he's
I
a big
mean,
old boy. About 6 kilos. He might be going on holiday with us. We're just trying to get his passports done while we're waiting for everybody to pile in. But yeah,
exactly,
we're trying to get his passport so he can come on holiday with us, rather than stick him in a cat hostel for a week.
exactly. And Los Gatos sin Madrid. We'll be happy with that if the cat can travel. So where do you want to start with? Should we start with Oreshnik or Crimea?
Ooh, I
Let's
mean,
start with the
I
Oreshnik.
mean that's the thing that's caught me this week is the Oreshnik, the lack
Yeah.
of the lack of, thank
Right,
God.
right.
Um,
And they
yeah.
night before last when I was at your place, they saber rattled the launch, site, and for our viewers who don't know, what happens is Western intelligence and Ukrainian intelligence see that, action happening, and so even if they don't wind up launching anything, which is perfectly fine with us, they can
Mm,
see that activity, and they really have very little time to make that announcement for people to make an adjustment and to I posted this the other day when it happened. I put a screenshot of the anticipated time arrivals if there had been a launch, and the difference between Kiev and Lviv was barely 5 minutes. So if you think of how fast a missile can travel from Kiev to Lviv in 5 minutes, that takes us 8 hours to drive, that gives you a pretty good sense of the distance that that missile is traveling and how quickly it will go from, the region that it's launched from in, in Russia
mm,
to hit us. And then also the fact that we know that they've been plotting and planning to move launch points into Belarus.
mm,
We had when we had the Oreshnik come through, what, on the 24th, I think, May 24th.
mm,
Um, that we had activity in Belarus around that time when Belarus was like, "Oh, we know all these targets as well, so don't be threatening." And so, we know that there's a very good likelihood, and as you know, they've given us about maybe 24 to 48 hours, in other words, over this weekend. And right now, outside my area, I don't know what the weather is where you're at. There's not a cloud in the sky. I mean, it's barely haze over the horizon. It's a ridiculously clear night. So we'll see what that turns into.
yeah, it was a bit different when you came down. It was hurricane winds, hail, rain. I was like,
Yeah,
you can tell why they it probably put off because of the weather. Maybe I don't know. It was
right.
enough to turn it, but yeah, I mean, it goes back to saying what we were saying on the previous episode that Russia can't hit everywhere all the time, and it has to stockpile. So, where is this going? It's just going to be the same old, increased size, complexity in the weapons package. I'm not
Mhm.
sure Russia can really do any more than it's doing, other than go to peace talks on nukes, and I don't think peace talks, by the looks of it, anywhere near ever happening.
Right.
So where's this going to go? Where can really Russia escalate? That's the worrying part. We don't know what's going to happen next, and as far as I can see it, they've pretty much exhausted everything, or sort of their manoeuvring where they could go,
Mhm.
other than just increase the severity of what they're already doing, which
Well, we
has
know
a
that they're
minimal
pushing.
impact.
We're going to talk about this in a little bit. That they are pushing to try to breach into Konstantinivka. They basically got about 100 guys that were able to get a little further in, so they're definitely pushing that. But as we've talked about, that dead zone between the two sides is over 20 kilometers wide. The strike locations are wider than that ultimately now, so they cannot. And I think it's very important to keep stressing to our friends they cannot move that heavy equipment into those areas, and that includes our guys. I mean, I know our
Mm.
guys are having to be deployed further away in the rear and then approach to their positions in a whole different way because essentially everything can be detected.
Yeah, I mean, if you do get a breakthrough, you've got a QR ready to go, and I would say some of those parts, those well, they're not front lines now, are they? It's a 100-meter wide kill zone, as we talked about. So
Right.
I need it is somewhere like a line, maybe,
Right.
that's not conventionally aligned. So it's a vast distance now. The whole battlefield's changing, and yeah, I mean, the whole dynamics have changed. As Dimko alluded to, they're going to die long before they ever get to fire their gun. That's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what Ukrainians want to do at the moment. They want to get them 20 k's out, 30 k's out, 100 k's out before they ever get to a start line or a form up point. And when they get to the form up point, they've got to go through all that drones and ballistics and HIMARS and whatever before they even start
Right.
getting towards Ukrainian trenches, and that's getting harder and harder for the Russians at the moment, or across the front line.
What also is getting hard for the Russians, I think, is probably one of our bigger, most important announcements to keep on, and we started this last week, is their logistical lines into Crimea keep evaporating. There were 6 substantial strikes also today on drone launch positions that were announced a few
Mm,
hours ago. That's delicious. And we've talked about this. Like, remember I told you how I take, and I don't mind describing to our viewers how I use AI related to my work for research. So I can take several monitoring channels. Like, we have a lot of monitoring channels that look at incoming missiles, drones, and activity, and that's pretty much all they do, and they're just dedicated to just that activity. And one of the things you'll see is like this many drones have been launched from this position or that position. And there's a 4-year record of these different activities. And I can take the JSON files that are exported from Telegram, put all 4 of those monitoring accounts into Claude AI and say, I have a prompt that I've customized for it, but basically to time sort that data so we can see trends. And then, especially when it comes to the launch points, which are the most prominent launch points on a regular basis, or like the one I'll be doing in a couple of days, which is the like a bomber overview, where they often land and depart from, which bombers are known to use which missiles. Like, you and I may know this, right? We know that the
mm.
T-95 uses Ka 101s, but our average viewers may not know what the differences are. And using that data, I can basically kind of, like I said, run through and have it, do a process of all those monitoring accounts, including from AFU Stratcom account. And they will list every single night that there's a drone swarm that comes from across the country. We can see when they come across the Sumy region, right? And the northeast section across Kharkiv. And then we can see them
Yep.
when they're coming in from Krasnodar and parts of Crimea, and precisely which bases even. So the fact that they've really landed 6 good punches on those today is дуже смачно, very delicious.
Yeah, I mean, anything to stop those packages coming in, or parts of those packages coming in, can have a detrimental effect on the whole operation,
Right.
as you know. And that land corridor is getting smashed at the moment. I saw some footage today of a
Hmm.
lorry driver going down, filming a Ukrainian strike drone coming over the top of them, and in the
Hmm.
background he's saying, "That's the third one I've seen today." And
Hmm.
it's like they're just getting smashed. So they're I think, Magyar's just sort of said, we're gonna have total fire control all over that. Where the Southern Axis, and the logistics go or the Russians get their logistics, to how they get them through is beyond me, if they,
Right.
do have fire control on there. So, essentially you could see that Southern Axis collapse if, they don't get ammunition, and I think that's gonna get, worse for the Russians on that, southern corridor and that Southern Axis, and then that leads you to Crimea, as we talked about the last episode. We discussed the pressure that's going to put on the Kerch Bridge now. That's definitely
Right.
going up the hit list. As the days go on, that's going. That's definitely going to go up the hit list. So it's a real turn of events, as I said to Dimka. I just can't believe we're sort of at this point 4 years in, with some sort of light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, if the Crimea goes, people weren't here last week. I said if Crimea goes, that's a Putin killer. That's a central
Hmm.
pillar of his whole invasion into Ukraine. It started there. It could end there. So it's watched his space. And America's now Trump, who's historically bailed out Putin every time he gets on the back foot, is now preoccupied with Iran. So,
Hmm.
we don't know how this is going to go. It's definitely escalated. As we said, it's getting worse. It's, the innovations are good, quite rightly
Hmm.
so, getting better for Ukraine, but they're now bombing intensely into Russia considerably more, waves and waves of 250 drones going in on top of ballistics and flamingos this week.
Hmm.
And Russia's going closer to NATO borders with, Oreshniks and their
Right.
ballistics. So it is escalating. The package is getting more advanced, more complex. You know, you only have to go back to 2022 to know that you know, ballistics was a no-no. Escalation was the worry point. It was scary for everybody. But now, yeah, they're flinging them everywhere. It's both sides. It's
Yeah.
drone ping pong.
Well, and our good viewer who's always with us here, Justin Dot asked, "Do you know where Oreshniks are likely to hit, or is there no way of telling?" The answer is there's no way of telling until it re-enters upon strike time. So once it's launched, all you have is that there has potentially been a launch, and then you're in a waiting mode. And yes, you really will not have much time to determine which target's being hit. So the one that hit south of here, I could actually see it from our studio. And you've been to the studio, you know, it's the top floor
Mm.
view across the river. And I also want to remind people that my position is where the battle has to take place in many ways for drones and rockets because it crosses the river. So I can literally see the Dnieper River from our studio, and they have to try everything they can to bring those down before it gets to the west side, otherwise known as the right bank. And that that night we had no location notice until essentially it was already in our area.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't know, and it is scary. You got to remember, and the audience probably knows, but you know, they're nuclear capable missiles. You know,
Yeah,
as a NATO country, you have no idea whether Russia's just launched, you know, a nuke. And for it to land 60 kilometers from a NATO border is
right.
essentially just pushing the boundaries of a mistake that could lead to a serious Article 5 and, you know, escalate to something serious. So, you know, let's not forget Russia's the only country that's flinging around nuclear capable missiles inside Europe at the moment. So, you know, this is a really dangerous time. I don't personally think they're going to use any sort of tac nukes or anything like that. But you never know if it gets desperate. I'm kind of hoping somebody's game this through. You know,
Mhm.
um, of where we go from this. Because if Putin struggles or he feels that he's going to lose Crimea, where is that going to make him do something even more stupid? So you know, you've heard the Russians call for it. There's been a lot of bravado this week. Even the big three have gone in to see Moscow this week, summoned, I believe. I'm not sure if it was summoned in the usual state. I think this was a meeting that was requested after several months. It's suddenly come to fruition. So I don't think it, but you know, you saw the public releases by Russia after the Germans and the UK ambassadors left the foreign office. So you know, it wasn't great. It's still the
Mhm.
same old crap. Denazify the regime, the problem, root cause, all the same old bullshit. You know, and so the rhetoric's not getting much better. Putin thinks he's winning, which
Yeah,
which
exactly.
is baffling. So he's not going to stop if he thinks he's if he thinks he's winning.
Right. And the we've had 3 Oreshnik launches. There was the one in your area in Dnipro, one in Lviv, and one here. And when it landed here, I didn't even see essentially like I see with all the other missiles, the Iskanders and Kha-101s. I saw no explosions. I'm not saying that there weren't. I just didn't see any, even when I saw the reports of what hit the ground. So, for those who don't know, the multiple independently targetable reentrant vehicle, otherwise known as MIRV or MIRV, there's 6 munitions by layers of 6. So when it comes down out of the sky, you see it actually it's kind of staggered like this. You know, if I were to do my own like this, you know, so instead of flat, right? And they're falling down 6 of these. Imagine 6 by 6 by 6, so 36 warheads across a wide range. How do you defend against that, you know? So what's most important for our viewers is no one here, including where you're at or where I'm at, suddenly decided that day was like, okay, we're ready to give up our freedom, our sovereignty, and everything that means good to us. No, and
No,
it's not
no,
gonna
no.
change anything, you know? What it'll do is create death and destruction and essentially raise the stakes for Europe and America to get more serious, but ultimately, it's not a game-changing weapon.
That's the problem you've got though. You've got Russia who's doing a old Soviet playbook where it's
Mhm.
threaten, 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 hopefully back off, and people are now, Ukraine's unlocked those that fear by
Right,
doing what it's doing in Russia, and it's not having that same impact. It's not having the same, and they're out of ideas. The Russians are out of ideas. They can't do anything else. They can't,
right,
militarily at their will anymore because that stopped. They look like they're losing ground. It could be potentially losing Crimea and the southern corridor, which is strategically the only thing they've managed to gain since 2022 is that
right,
land corridor, nothing else essentially. He is they're struggling, um, and they run out of ideas. So that's scary in itself. And if you've run out of ideas, you're searching for ideas. Then you know anything could be on the cards. We just don't know how desperate Putin will be if he feels he's losing Crimea because
right.
that rhetoric's not getting any better.
And there's also a point that was brought up pivoting, towards our kind of third item about Konstantinivka, is that, I forget who did the interviews this week, but a few folks went out and talked with, um, guys in Slovyansk in that region, Kramatorsk, and, it's Donetsk, and everyone likes in the West who is sort of being stupid and then complicit with the Russians. So I'm gonna put those in 2 categories. Complicit with the Russians, we'll just put that in its own, we're not gonna worry about that, but that's stupid in the middle, you know?
Mhm.
If you interrogated them, they would pass like, "No, I'm not support Russia. I just think that, isn't Donbass completely conquered by now?" No, they don't understand. There are plenty of people who do not understand. No, they do not have all of Donetsk. They have a significant portion, and they've been trying to push their way through, but they have not been able to seize the whole territory, which is why when Witkoff and those assholes are saying like, "Well, we're just gonna hand over what? Hand over land that's not already claimed?" You know? And I think that's important because you see that if he can't secure that line, right? If he can't get all the way up to the edge of the oblast, he failed. He knows he failed. So
Mm.
it's not just Crimea, he hasn't finished the deal. He hasn't finished at
That's
least
it. No.
the part that essentially is the I conquered and I won, and if it stopped today, he got hit what he wanted. No, he didn't ultimately.
No, he's
So,
he's really struggling. If he stopped today, it'd be an ultimate failure because like you said, he's not taken Donetsk. He's been at that since 2014, not
right,
2022. So he hasn't achieved any of his strategic aims for invading in the first place, and now we're going on longer than World War One. It's
right,
it's a special military operation. It's certainly special. It's breaking records for all the wrong reasons. Now they're coming up to 1,000,004 casualties, which is
right,
unbelievable. In this day and age, and it's not stopping. We just talked about recently Zelensky giving Putin an off ramp, to talk about peace, and he's flatly denied it. Flatly
mhm,
denied prison exchanges, flatly denied humanitarian aid, he flatly denied a ceasefire, and in fact gone on the offensive after that letter, which it's ridiculous to be fair, because
right.
nobody actually knows the reasons why Russia's invaded. So, which is good for Ukraine in a way because if Russians don't know why they're
Empires are gonna empire.
it's gonna be probably problematic for the Russians if their soldiers start to turn. And historically, battles are won because the other side's logistics has failed. Considerably long before uh, they've won the battle because morale is so much easier when you're winning. Um, you know, and you're taking ground.
Well,
You got
I think you said this with
logistics coming in.
did you say this with Adam last night? Because I think it was with your
Yeah.
conversation with Adam when you said, trying to regain that initiative is harder than you think. And you pointed out that whether it was the artillery shortages 2 years ago, these things that just start demoralizing Ukrainian fighters. And I know because even though I'm not a
Yeah, well, I
soldier,
was
I
in Mariupol trying to
hang out
keep
with
people
them.
motivated.
Yeah,
Keeping people motivated when you're in a 200-kilometer encirclement and to keep fighting is extremely bloody hard. I mean,
right.
it's because nobody's coming for you, so it has to be the reason you carry on fighting is because you believe in the cause. You believe that that you need to hold out and sacrifice yourself for the greater good. That's why I'm incredibly proud of what I did and served with who I served, because they all had that mentality.
Hmm.
We didn't have logistics. The only reason we eventually decided to break out is because we were running out of ammunition and food and water and the basics. So
Right.
you know Russia going to really do that in Ukraine, in a foreign land, when their logistics caves? Probably not. They're not going to be
Hmm.
in that same mindset. It's different when it's your home, and
Right.
I think they're far from theirs. So, if Ukraine's got the right strategy there, if you take out the logistics, you stop the logistics going to the most of the military in that southern axis, the chances of them capitulating and caving in are quite strong. Um, you
Hmm.
know, and you can end up walking to the Azov Sea without even a gunfight if they put they start to starve and they run out of water and cave in. So it's the right. I think it's the right thing they're doing because it involves using minimal Ukrainians, to do that. You're using drones, automated service, automated equipment.
Hmm.
So if we talked about that, from casualties to resupply to attacking, vehicles and logistics vehicles and military vehicles, it's all automated now. So you're minimizing the risks to Ukrainian servicemen, which suits Ukraine. So
Hmm.
Russia's really struggling as it still loses anywhere between 1,000 and 1,500 servicemen a day, which is about roughly 2 or 3 battalions equivalent to a day. I mean, that's
Right.
you know
Yeah. And
the
their
risk.
attrition rate is higher than the recruitment rate, mixed with the escalation and deletions. We're gonna so steal that.
That's we're gonna steal that.
Well,
That's so
Diakri, bro.
yeah, that's so Dimko. That is deleting people. Yeah, I mean
Delete.
it makes sense when you
Strong Bad. Do you know
talk
who
to them.
Strong Bad is? I'm gonna hit you with the internet thing. Do you know who Strong Bad is?
No,
Strong Bad is a funny character, cartoon character on the internet, probably about 15 years ago. And it's a little bit like South Park, and it's real simple. Dear Strong Bad, never mind, delete. He just like all he does is read emails, and they're really weird. But everything, the punchline is always delete. So yeah, so we're going to be doing that with Russians. But there's really an interesting thing that happened on both sides, but I think that we should compare the two. And this was in our list, but you'll catch it immediately. In both countries, the ability to deal with the equivalent of private air defense, if you will, is being promoted at the policy level. But here it's more obvious in a way, like, yeah, you'd be able to do this, and of course, you need to be able to protect your own facilities, and therefore. But when Russia has to do the same thing, it sort of has to acknowledge something that it does not want to acknowledge, is that its vulnerabilities are huge. And I said this about when we talked about escalation management in the first year and a half. What I told people is, you have to remember how big the American footprint is. So
mm,
every portion of an asset that is an American around the world, and Iran just showed that, is vulnerable. And that's exactly
yeah,
what Iran exposed, was that America's vulnerabilities, being the vast empire that it can be in the military sense, is that you can't protect all those assets. Now, when you're smaller, and you and I talked about the size of Ukraine versus size of Texas, and I said, I sometimes forget how big America is, but obviously, since Russia is the largest country in the world, it has all of that it has to protect, and it has minimal resources to actually do this. And this has created a big tension between the services, those companies, private voices, and the Kremlin. You know,
No,
and
absolutely.
it does not exist in that vibe here, even though, like I said, the parameters are
No.
nearly parallel, but we don't have that vibe here.
No, I mean, we touched on it. I mean, Iran and America at the moment isn't even peer-to-peer fight. You know, it's a vastly smaller than America. But you know, Dimko hit the nail on the head with that quote. He said, "I don't like using this because I don't want to offend Americans." But he said, you know, the world's waking up to the fact that you don't need airplanes to do another 9/11. And
Yeah.
you only look at Operation Spider's Web, and yet, you know, we've got the UK and Britain still faffing around about defence spending and, you know, really not built after talking to Dimko, I'm absolutely certain we're not built for modern day warfare, let alone
No.
what's happening in the
No, no.
future. So you know, we're going to need Ukraine really to teach us how to fight in this modern environment. But you know, some of these militaries can get a bit sticklers for not working well with other people. But you know, certainly UK's going through. We got a defence minister that's just resigned this week because the
I
UK
see
isn't
you guys have
spending
some
enough.
things going on. If you want to tell us what's going on a little bit while we're on that topic for half a minute. I know that Starmer's dealing with some things, but I don't follow it like you would. So let's do this whole part where, hi, I'm an American. I don't know shit about UK. What's happening, Sean?
I
Don't
can't
feel
think.
bad. Our Ministry of War guy can't lift weights.
Well, I think ours can lift weights. He's just resigned though. He's quite well respected and one of Ukraine's biggest supporters, which is really worrying. And
Sure.
also you've got Starmer, who's probably now his whole political career is on the line now because you know next to defending the realm is probably the next job you know, the next most important job other than prime minister. So
Mhm.
it isn't a good look at the moment. And you know, we do know in England that we have a defence force, not even an army anymore. Probably 20,000 teeth of that you know are the army. The 20,000 of them are actually the guys that do the fighting. 20 or 30,000 of them. So out of 70 odd thousand or 80,000, what we got, you know, very little we can actually do.
Mhm.
You know, I see, you know, we need to spend more. It was something I agreed with Trump about. We need to spend more on defense, you know, and I don't agree with him very often, but I'm not even sure that was his idea originally, but
Mhm.
you know, I do agree with him that we need to spend more on defense, and it's just not happening. But even with Ukraine and what's going on with Russia, and we're still lagging way behind of what we need to spend on defense.
One of the other things in there is that, you know, when we have the Congress has passed the Senate side of the, you know, bill, 750 million, I believe. So it has to go to Trump. I don't see. I mean, it's not veto proof, you know, numbers in the House or the Senate, but it's, you know, signing it could be very uncontroversial. I I'm always very suspicious of the administration, as you know, but they seem to be getting the message that they're not on the winning side with their behavior for the last year and a half. They are slowly changing their verbiage about the army that can fight. They're like Rubio kind of did it best before he wished Happy Russia Day, bled.
Mm.
Anyway, no, we don't wish you well, Russia. Anyway, fuck off. but But the fact that he said, like, and we talked about this in your interview with Dimko, is that Ukraine is the army that's got it down. I mean, it's like this. I would rather fight a black belt who has not been in the ring for the last 7 years than a blue belt who fights every day trying to get to his black belt because the blue
I
belt
just
is warmed up. You
just
know,
yeah. Martin's right. You know, it
it's
is.
actually happened, by the way.
I'm
What
just
was this?
reading the questions. Martin's right. It's Dimko taught us quite a bit about how we're, you know, we're paying for the wrong gear.
Yeah, we'll come to that. Exactly, exactly. And so
We're
that's
paying
part of it is that if you look at how we had to lecture America when it wanted to do this war with Iran, which is you don't intercept drone. Man, why are y'all trying to intercept Shahids with like Patriots
I
and
was
all
in
this stuff
bed,
they
I
were doing?
told you the other he
They
was in
launched
bed the
like
other day.
900 Patriots in no time, and we were like, "Why? Tumo." Anyway, so
Yeah, I was like
no one
lying in
here would
bed
do
the
that.
other night. I was just
Yeah.
lying in bed, I could hear, Larissa looked at her, I said, "What is it?" She went, "It's just a Shaheed." And I heard the air defense going, and my eyes started going, "Guys, this is like firing a PAC-3 for a fucking Shaheed." I was like, my eyes
Right,
started
exactly.
twitching, and I'm like, "No wonder we need more bloody PAC-3s."
Well, we're now looking at intercept missiles that could be around 700,000 as opposed to 1.5 million. And that's again, those interceptors are designed for Iskandar's Cog 101s, the missiles. That's not how our guys fight Shahids. Shahids are not fought here with those weapons. And I think there's a big thing that, and I'd really like you to elaborate on this since you've been in the service using what isn't there. When you don't have the resources that NATO forces have, especially America, that can plop a Burger King on each corner of its base in a 24-hour period. When you don't have that, you change all of your strategies and your tactics thus evolve from your resource strategies. Yes.
Yeah,
And
absolutely, yeah.
that probably is why, I mean, for one, this is why with the Starobilsk strike, when people were arguing what the target was, I have really come to know what the Ukrainian mentality about targeting is because I know it's completely derived from lack of resources. When you only have so many shells you can fire in a day, like in January 20 when I was in Pokrovsk, 2024, earlier 2024, and I hear a commander say, "Try fighting a war where I had to tell my guys you have 7 rounds today." Did he say 7? Like my brain went, did he say their guys have to go plan today to
Well,
fire
6 now.
7 rounds?
Yeah.
What the
Oh,
fuck?
now
But that
5.
changes that changes your strategy, but also builds you as a different army than the ones that used to with all the additional stuff. And I think that
Yeah.
that's a detriment to the United States to think that its big mighty arsenal wins all the time when it doesn't know how to use it.
Yeah. I mean, just look at what's going on in Iran at the
So take
moment.
over because I just said a lot there to set that up.
Yeah, but just look what's going on in Iran at the moment. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
how it's on, it's off, it's open, it's closed, it's open, it's closed. The deal's been done, it's not been done, it's been done, it's not been. All the while, they've just taken out another Apache with a drone. It's crazy to think this is the world we live in. Size is not all at the moment. Ukraine has literally turned Russia's size into its Achilles heel.
Mhm.
It's opening up. Now we've seen all these vulnerabilities in Russia that the whole world can see. Russians must be quaking, that they can't use the old methods anymore. It's like every week is a nuclear threat, a nuclear exercise, or a nuclear test. How many nuclear tests, exercises, and preparations do you need to do in 1 month? So none of these are sort of working anymore. And I think, quite a lot of Russians can see that too, that Ukraine is opening up, opening Russia up considerably for the
Mhm.
world to see their faults. And I mean, the biggest one is how quick they reckon they've got their own Starlink now in about 2 minutes flat.
Mhm.
With low, that was another talking point with Dimko that we chatted on, which
Mhm.
was, communications that Russia's way behind. I don't believe for 1 minute they've got anywhere near a Starlink.
No.
I think that's just propaganda of the highest order, to be fair,
Well, and
because
we
you're not seeing any of it on the battlefield, that's for sure.
right. And after you had your talk with, Dimko on this, you and I kept talking on the patio about this a little bit. I pointed out that in the book, The Red Web, by my friend Andrei Soldatov, and his father basically created the Russian internet, or sometimes we call it the RuWeb. Um, in the 80s, when his father went to these generals, and there were these really old Russian, like your stereotypical generals from everything that's pretty well documented, especially in his book. I think Red Web is a great book for understanding the history of the Russian web. SORM 1, 2, and 3, all that system. But anyway, they were not interested in computers. They're like, "What kind of tank is this?" "Well, no, it's a computer, it does this." So, like, it's like tank, like, this is about as evolved as the narrative portrays these guys. But you can tell that that is what resulted, and it keeps being how they do business to this very day. There's always some other thing that's in there kind of boorish, you know, like, tough guy mentality. It's like, someone wrote Pete Hegseth, so my brains go just like Pete Hegseth. Um, where you put that big bravado on, but there's no skill in it, and therefore you think everything's gonna be about BMPs and tanks and missiles and rockets, and then all of a sudden your shit's getting blown up because you didn't pay attention to AI development. You didn't pay attention to the type of creation necessary to catch you up, whereas Ukraine's like, "We did." You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. And we've got the next gen, and we're moving forward. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to do with the fact that Russia's agenda is
Yeah,
imperialism. They wanted Kiev, and they've got to keep moving forward. Now they're saving face at the cost of a considerable amount of Russians. So like you said earlier, they're killing more and creating more casualties than Russia can recruit. That's not a lasting policy. So that means they're going to have to, at some point, forcibly conscript a large amount of people if he still wants to pursue attacking Ukraine. So there's that side of it too. But the corruption has pretty much hollowed out the Russian military, and they're living with it 4 years later after the start of the invasion. No comms, yeah, reliant on
right,
Western tech. But this is a government who doesn't like the West, and NATO's bad, and the
right,
West is bad, satanic West. Oh, by the way, we're using your Starlink. It's
right,
like,
right.
hold on a minute. What? What did you just say? And
Exactly.
Telegram. Oh man, they're not worried about killing Ukrainians, committing genocide, or destroying families in Ukraine. But take away Telegram, that's every Russian kicking down doors now, crying that they've got no Western social media platforms. And
Mhm.
hell, if that works, take it all down. Don't give it to them. Let's turn theirs off. If that's gonna get a reaction out the Russians, let's turn off their. Can we do that, Chris? You're the geek, right? Can we turn off their internet?
Mm, I mean, we kinda do. And
Yeah,
actually, I
we
would say,
kind of do.
Russia does it themselves, and it's, the old phrase, the dummy hack, where
Mm.
essentially you don't really breach the computer, you get the user to do something stupid to screw up their own computer. "Hey, could you, yeah, sys.config, yeah, delete that. Now you're safe. Oh, I'm sorry, it doesn't work anymore? Oh, good luck."
Yeah.
Um, like, you know, so in a way, there are ways that the Russian psychology, um is hardwired that especially that the Ukrainians know that psychology better than fucking
Yeah,
anybody.
absolutely, yeah.
Better
The
than
best
anybody.
everywhere out there.
And so, there are definitely information psyop that occur on the Ukrainian side towards it's all aimed at Russia in the end, but it also aims at the West in a way that aims back at Russia. In other words, by saying, position A about what could happen. So let me give you the example from last week when Robert Brovdi says, and he's the head of the unmanned, forces, our drone forces,
Mm.
whose birthday was 2 days ago, by the way. So happy birthday to our is Dnem Narodzenia,
Happy birthday.
to our unmanned forces. So he said, "Well, we have all these targets listed in Belarus," and Belarus came back and said, "Well, all of that is a form of a psyop." Because the other option is to say absolutely nothing and have the targets. So
Yeah.
when you announce that we have these targets with such confidence, and the way Zelensky goes, "Oh yeah, well we have the ability to do this," and all of that messaging causes reactions on the Russian side that no other European country is trying to do. America's not trying to do. And it's part it, one, it's not just a brain fuckery, it's actually got landing gear, ultimately.
Yeah, we don't do any of that. I mean, I'm still fascinated now why we don't, you know, you know, we can't even say, even with the UN convoy, the UN can't even point the finger at Russia, even though
Right.
they've put it all on their social media and they're screaming at it. We're the same with the militaries. We don't have a dedicated, propaganda side, or we do, but it's so overstretched or underfunded, whatever way you look at it. But it's nowhere near on where Russia is with psyops and state-run media. You need something to counteract that, surely, and we don't.
Yeah.
Where do we ever see anything like that from NATO? Maybe pump out a NATO video on social media once in a while, but we don't see anything like that from the Europeans, NATO, or we're pretty pathetic at that,
Mhm.
of you know drawing our own red lines. We've been pretty
Mhm.
pathetic with it since the start of full scale invasion.
Right.
We didn't come up with our own red lines yet. We're sort of somehow in, into Russia, you know, vicariously, if you know what I mean. We're now, in 2022 we couldn't fire ballistics. Now you've got 2-3 waves of 200 drones going into Russia from Ukraine. You've got flamingos flying into Russia. It's Russia's red lines that are being broken. Putin's
Right.
being tied up with his red lines at the moment. So I don't know how we've ended up at this point without actually having anything to combat that Russian propaganda, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And I wanna separate two forms of this propaganda model on purpose. So, active measures that are designed influence operations that are designed to sway policy opinion in DC and Europe, all that. That's one form. So that's the active measures, activity meripuriatia,
Mm,
that we're sorta used to hearing, the influence operations. But when I think of the part of PSYOP I wanna deal with and for this conversation is more about two aspects of it: removing the fire from the belly of your enemy, like mollifying their interest in fighting. In other words, literally fighter to fighter, and I don't mean like literally soldier to soldier, but I mean like military to military, not about the civilian or policy population. Just on the ground, we know that you and I watch enough Telegram and others. We can see some things that happen that are in that particular and I know you're gonna wind up on YouTube, so I'll watch my brain fuckery comment, but that's the only one I know to use. Um, that is designed basically military to military. It's not
yeah.
about the part that's policy oriented or the public sphere. And in the military to military psyop activity, um, Russia has, I think they have the weakness compared to the Ukrainians ultimately in the belly, and I'll explain why in a second. But on the policy level, I want to pivot back to the policy level for a minute. On the active measures policy level or the reflection control policy level, I don't know about Britain and Europe. I'm going to take a guess at it based on the American model, but in the early 70s with the Church Committee, because of America's violations around the world with the intelligence community, COINTELPRO with FBI, etc., the compunction, very important word to think about in this context, about use of intelligence any way, shape, or form, anywhere, became a negative. And just this week, we had this realty guy, Pulte, that was going to be the new replacement for Tulsi Gabbard. He has no intel experience, and he's a yes man for Trump. Bill Pulte spent years in the commercial in the community development sector of the United States. He has no military background. He has no intel background. So we have an entire culture in America that is rooted in hating our own intelligence agencies. Our own intelligence agencies. They have no sense of what it does to protect either our lives or the lives around the world.
Mm.
We just wired that way. And Russia's like, we like this. Please, more compunction. Can you get him some compunction? He wants more compunction. Bilshi. So, um, I think that that's important to understand because it's the difference between a person who fights completely without the rules and someone so bound by the rules that they're losing by saying, "I'm not being ruthless enough." And you know from your experience in war, the actual battle, that you gotta bend those rules on the battlefield. You may not bend the Geneva Convention rules once you're in control of troops that you got, but you gotta do everything you can to defeat your enemy in that middle of that, and all that shit flies out the fucking window.
Yeah, I mean, it literally, yeah. To be honest, yeah, there's no Queensberry rules,
Mhm,
where when you're stuck in somewhere like Mariupol in an encirclement,
mhm,
you're gonna do whatever it takes to get out of that.
mhm.
It's like, yeah, it's sort of, yeah, I know what you're saying. I'm not going to incriminate myself by saying I did war crimes because I
Yeah, yeah,
didn't.
of course not,
To be
right.
fair,
Well, Martin
but
yeah, Martin
yeah,
says our
I mean,
advantage in the world is US intelligence, and I'm gonna say again, I'm gonna just rephrase what I just said. If the US intelligence agencies are bridled because of America's reticence to use intelligence in some way that might not be our enemies don't care. They want us to have that mentality. They really want us to hate the CIA. They want us to hate the idea of FISA warrants. They invest a lot of propaganda model into reinforcing trolls and or ideologues on the left and the right or center, whoever is apprehensive about technology and use of intelligence, and the more that is vocalized in the West, the more Russia's like, "Yes, please have this feeling,"
yeah,
because
because
they don't
Russia's
have any brakes on that.
no, they don't have anything. They're limitless. They will. The reason you go and get interrogated by the Russians is because they want to know everything about you, so they could possibly find something they could use.
Mhm.
So the one thing they do with Ukrainians is they probably try and track down their families, ring them up and say, "I've got your son. If you don't go and torture Carl
Yeah,
or go and yeah, I'm gonna
yeah,
go and I'm gonna kill your son." And that's normally the intelligence FSB that are doing that shit.
yeah,
It's the
yeah,
intelligence agencies doing that. So they would do anything to the Russians to try and win this war, and that's only gonna be get worse if they're backed into a corner and feel like they're losing, which is what I've just had discussion this week at the UKMC here about,
mhm,
POWs and where do we go from here? If
mhm,
Russia's gonna essentially, on the back foot, it's only gonna get tougher to get your POWs home. There's
right,
nothing you can really do about it. If Russia doesn't want you to see them or have any access to them or doesn't want them to have any humanitarian aid, then there's not much you can really do about it. And generally, it's the intelligence agencies that are controlling that. All the way from your capture to if you're lucky enough to get released, they control every aspect of that.
right.
So yeah, we don't have that. We are. They don't have any moral bar.
That's right,
But we do,
right,
unfortunately.
right.
Sometimes we shouldn't have that moral bar. We're bound by that moral bar,
This
which
is why
most
I often compare what is happening in the mindset to think about that show, and it's not to pitch the show, but just the concept, that I had an awakening in watching that silly show of zombies, that the
mm,
main bad character everyone was talking about, Negan with the baseball bat, it was an epiphany based on what we have here, where he doesn't give a fuck. I mean, his wife's dead, it's him against the world. I mean, he so long as he survives, that's the only thing that's in his mind. Who he loves the most is gone. Now it's just him against with survival. Then you have Sheriff Rick, the White House sheriff, and there's a reason why he's the White Hat sheriff. That's symbolic, and he's still bound by the old order of rules of civility. He has a son. He has all those other trappings that cause us to make good decisions. By the way, ultimately good
mm.
decisions for civil life, but that juxtaposition, and especially that it's set in an apocalyptic world, I think that that's something that I have really, really thought about when it comes to that apprehension in the West about what to do when the button has to be pushed. I don't mean nuke button, but the action button, is that you still have that reticence. And the reason why that I obsess with that is I can see that the propaganda model, meaning that the data that shows what trolls push, where they push it and who they push it on, is that the Russians understand that about us. Because that's why you get all of that rhetoric that comes out at the Irish pricks and the Nigerian trolls, or these different places that come up and just shout at Ukrainians, shout at those of us who support Ukrainians. Is if you break it out that who they're just shouting about, what is it they're shouting? Why are they shouting it? And what is the message trying to convey? Is that you're supposed to hate America, you're supposed to hate the Western forces, you're supposed to hate NATO, you're supposed to hate the thing that keeps totalitarian, authoritarian power in check, aside from the
So
White
where do
House.
the Lego videos fit in? Because I think they're flipping hilarious.
I think
And
that
the
they
the
understand this better than anybody. They did great.
exactly. That's exactly my point, is when your
Yeah.
enemy understands you better than you understand them. Those Lego clips are prime
Correct.
example of that.
Correct.
That's the
Correct.
propaganda where they clearly are just they know,
Right.
what's gonna appeal to an American audience, and
Right.
and and they are hilarious. They are extremely
There.
funny, and then for an instant, you forget who's behind it,
Right.
and Trump's credibility is that bad that people are now questioning whether or not they trust the Trump administration above the IRGC now. It's like, hold on a
It's
minute, no,
crazy.
you're really off the chart. See, you can't. Yeah, they're not nice people. They make some funny,
Mm,
good Lego videos, but that's about it. But that's a prime example of what you're talking about.
right. Well, also that the fact that Russia has often pushed America's racism, for instance, things that America battles internally, it tries to
Yeah,
aggravate them. Sometimes, like I found this studying the troll, the Internet Research Agency and its follow-ups, FAN and all those, is that they didn't really understand Americans. It's sort of like the way I know Ukrainians sometimes misinterpret American things because I'm American. So they learn us from television screens mostly, right? And internet,
yeah.
right? And then there's an assumption of what it lives like. And then I'm an American go, well, no, not really. I get the veneer, but we're not in America, we're not actually a Netflix show, you know? Our lives are far more chaotic than that and not nearly as neat. And same thing with our racism issues is that they don't translate as well. But they hit those with us and those Lego commercials, they really hit Trump and his minions at their weak points about ICE raids, and in a way that when those things came across, I said, well, at least someone understands it finally, because I do get to laugh at our adversary when they don't understand us. And
Epstein,
sometimes when they
Charlie
get it
Kirk,
right, it's like Epstein, Charlie Kirk. Oh,
all
the
topical.
Elon, they had one with Elon, remember, a couple like 3 weeks ago?
I like the
And,
Cash Patel one myself. That was
the
about
Cash Patel one was absolutely hilarious, absolutely.
yes. When he went to the ice hockey team and started drinking his
Oh
bubbly
my
little
god.
eyes, when I was howling. I was thinking that was quite funny, but it is
Right.
that's dangerous.
But
That
but
you're
but
sitting
again,
there.
back to your point is we don't know them. No one in the
Yeah.
American, propaganda machine that would need to, if you said today, "Look, hey, Trump, man," you get it, let's say you get his attention, right? And you say, what is, "Be safe." "I'm fine, thank you." "Thank you for your wishes of being safe." Um, if you said,
Retreat.
"Attack Russian
Dear man.
targets," if you attack Russian targets in a psyop, I would say, you may have people in the army who know how to do it, but the policy level they don't. You still have people who think that
No,
bringing up pigs will dissuade Muslims for something. The way in which the racism of the rabid right engages in how it thinks it should stop other people around the world. Their ignorance of the people around the world is why their model doesn't exist. It just
exactly.
doesn't
Yeah,
exist.
no.
They
That
know nothing
exactly.
about Russians, they know nothing about Muslims, they know nothing about Iran, so they can't effectually get into the message market, like you said, how they can kinda get under the skin of Americans.
I don't know. Candice Owens does pretty well. She understands Russia quite well, and she's doesn't speak the language, and and has never doesn't understand it culturally. And I mean, she seems to she seems to be telling everybody it's the place to be,
Yeah.
along with uh, what was it? Tommy Robinson is another one. The Tate brothers, all the dregs of humanity who are struggling with their own court cases and saying, you
You
know,
and I both have good friends who could take care of that problem if they would go to the front. Just go to the
it's
front.
just horrible, isn't it?
Like, there's a
I
guy,
get out of bed in
Christopher
the morning.
Lawley. Do you remember this
uh,
guy, Christopher Lawley, who signed a deal with the Russian MOD, but he has yet to show up anywhere in a uniform or a tank anywhere since then? He's still doing TV panels like a podcaster.
Rick Sanchez.
Rick
I,
Sanchez.
I just
I
like,
remember Rick
oh
Sanchez.
God, this is like enough to get me my coffee in the morning. I turn on
I'm
my
getting
phone, look at the app.
get your blood pressure to go up here at this time of
Yeah,
night.
yeah. Give me another. Give me. I've stopped smoking. No, I wish I hadn't stopped smoking. To be honest, absolute dregs of humanity.
Oh my god.
Oh, it
We have
just
some
does my
wonderful
head
friends here.
in.
We got 75 wonderful friends sitting here with us,
Thank you.
and
Yeah,
let me say what I often say, we're not done yet, by the way, to our friends. We are at 1 hour, though. Um,
yeah. We've got another 3 hours to go.
yeah, so in our first hour, I think we covered a few bases. Let me say something real quick that I say to you guys one-to-one, but now Shaun's here, I'm gonna put him on the spot. Um, if you aren't already subscribed to Shaun's account, as even a free subscriber, please become a subscriber. If you're not a paid subscriber and you can at least start off at the $5 level, please do that. If you can do the $80 for a year, I don't know what your numbers are for yours, but whatever that year package is, please consider doing that for the same reason. And here's why. When I was at Shaun's this week, um, one, we've been talking for a while, but we get to sit at the same table on your patio and talk shop about what needs to be done. And between you and I, we have really good resources of people, access to administration, and a range of amazing people. And then the two of us together, the brain power grows even bigger because it kind of
Mm.
does it geometrically. And then Tom Much was with us and Deemco there,
Oh
and we
yeah,
have this resources for you guys, but we have to be able to do it instead of going to get another job because your wife needs you to pay the rent. You got to pay the car, you got to pay for groceries, you got to have the things paid instead of a hobby of journalism. And
absolutely.
why I'm going to say that on your behalf is that our friends who are watching right now, you have a journalist in front of you named Shaun Penner who
Sean
knows
Penner.
a lot about both the battle aspects, the policy aspects, the culture around us, and he also lives in the south of Ukraine, and being in Dnipro is a different orbit about things. I live in Kyiv, so we have a range here of how we see this, and so your support for his work and your support for my work is invaluable. It helps us to get this done. That's my message.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we do. I think, likewise, I think I said to you that I really set voices up because I got fed up with asking for money. I thought if I give something back, maybe someone's getting something in return would be a better. Certainly, morally for me, it felt better rather than to put pressure on people and saying I need some money. So a shares is good, a repost is as good, and telling people about what we're doing is as good. In some aspects of it, if you don't have the funds to really sign up, so it is.
Yeah.
We do. I think we do enough to try and keep the updates every day, so everybody can read them. We put some stuff on that paid subscribers can get. It's that balance we got to do,
I watched
and we're
him
not.
writing articles on the train. You were sitting there pounding at the keyboard the entire train ride back.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He
It
gets
gets
he
me out
gets
of
up in
bed
front
every
of me
morning.
yesterday to edit the video we filmed with, Deemco and Tom Much, and, like,
Yeah, it
you
gets,
were head down in the work, bro. It was so good to see you doing the work.
it's gotta you gotta keep going. I mean, it gets you out of bed every morning. We're fighting a war, and it's critical to get that information out
Right.
and beat the propaganda. So, and I know that they're now attacking me more, and yourself. I've seen the people come in and pretend they're Ukrainian, and now starting to pretend they're Ukrainian and start attacking us on social media now, far more than
Sure.
they have done. trying to discredit us online, which is another one where, if you get an anonymous guy like we had this week who was sort of, um, the
Oh,
boogeyman, it's like
oh my
just
god.
came online and just started turning on us for no particular reason, claiming that I'm not even a fighter, and he was in the Ukrainian military,
I'm
and
not even a
uh,
journalist.
oh, I was like, yeah, just I haven't got it. Well,
That
already
I had to cover the QR code, but yeah, like,
just
"Sorry,
you
bro,
have
I'm
to.
actually accredited 7 times over."
It's a joke 'cause it's, it just you can't spend the time on it. Your name's at the top of your account. He's an anonymous account hiding behind anonymity
Exactly.
on an X. So he can say whatever he wants to you, and then, you call him the whole thing got I called him out on it and said, "You don't really have an opinion because you're anonymous," and he lost his temper, it's like, "Just tell us who you are, mate," and, maybe
Right.
I can,
So the
entertain
f
what you
the
want.
phrase for that is disinhibition, online disinhibition, when you can hide behind an anonymous name and troll with no consequence. You're not gonna lose your
Yeah.
job, your wife's not gonna hate you, your kids aren't gonna hate you, you can just all of your id comes out, you know? And,
Yeah.
what my message has been, and some of the viewers who are here with us right now know this, when we had that missile attack on the 24th, I calmly sat in our balcony window here on the top part of the floor with the windows wide open as the bombs were landing and the air defense is going off. And as calmly as you know me to be, unless I'm pissed off at somebody, um, I had a very calm voice going, "Do
You're
you
a
hear
little
that?
ball
Yeah,
of hate.
I am a regular ball of nothing but inferno." And, but I asked them, like, "Do you hear me, like, losing my shit as the bombs are falling around us? Then why does anyone think a troll is going to destroy my life?" My issue
Exactly.
with the troll types is I just think they
Exactly,
should be
yeah.
rounded up in vans and brought to the front to pick up the FPV wire.
Yeah, exactly.
Clean up clean up the dregs of humanity by putting them to work.
I've been interrogated by the FSB. You think someone called the boogeyman?
Exactly, exactly.
It's like,
"We're
he's
going to break you,
you know,
Shaun." Really? Oh,
"Am I getting to you?" "No." It's like, "No, you're not." Block. It's like,
yeah.
oh, just, people have no idea,
Well, I published an article yesterday, I'll use one today, I called you about this one. Um, you were busy editing, but I had this, post I put up yesterday that was not looking at trying to talk about historical events merely in the abstract or, like, one particular event with Volhynia in 1943. I had been really meditating on how to deliver that message to our audience in a way that especially from my position, what I'm seeing in it. And after I backed off and was hanging out with you for a few days, it finally came to me. I need to apply a grievance model, a grievance and relief model. And there's actually,
mm,
because I had studied this with my terrorism work, I and how to mollify insurgencies, for instance. Um, if you do not take care of the needs, or at least take the fire out of the belly of your adversary, then you're going to keep dealing with them. So you have to take the
mm,
fire out of the belly of the adversary. And so when you have a long history of nothing but oppression, then what happens is the rule list winds up different because nothing gets paid off. It's sort of like baiting a dog with a treat that you never gave to the dog. The dog will eventually realize there is no treat. Um, so similarly, the more I obsessed with that story, because we had this tension online between Polish accounts attacking Ukrainian accounts, I said, let me apply more about the grievance model because I think it actually does describe why what happened in 1943. It has to be seen in context about long linear thinking. And when I finally put it out and put it up public, I had said, well, by this matter, we could say this about Stalin and Hitler too. No, because they're at the top of the power structure. If you don't understand my article, don't argue with me. Ask questions. Because all you did was just prove that you didn't read it. You just said Polish and went, "Oh, I'm angry now." And
yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
fazed by it. I'm gonna just riff on it and turn it into written material. I didn't get pissed off about Tulsi Gabbard yesterday with the biolabs. I turned it into an article. I didn't get pissed when someone says, "Well, I think she's left." I just turned it into an article. So every time something like that comes at me, I'm just going, "Okay, I got writing material." And you
Well, it
did the
does,
same
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
You
That's
do the same thing I noticed. You get a little writing material, right? Something
sometimes you
comes
come
up.
up and the troll's giving you some good info, and you just think, "Hold on a minute, I can use that," and it's like,
Sure.
That's pretty good, yeah, good perspective. I mean, they're just it is really sad. I mean, you know, there's not much you can really you sort of expect it if you've got 60, 100,000 people on X, you're gonna get some shit, you know?
Right.
Not everyone's gonna agree with what you write or say, and
Yeah.
but you sort of accept the fact that you're gonna get critics on there. I don't think
Oh,
really it's as bad as I thought it would be. You know, but you do get just people come on to attack you because they're jealous. You
right,
know, they're
right.
jealous that you're and you just think you wouldn't step into my shoes and go through what we went through all in Mariupol for 2 minutes. You wouldn't,
Right.
you probably might do it if you thought you were getting out, alive, but I had no idea, you know, I had no idea whether I was gonna get out alive. So,
Yeah.
you know, people who could just be really, uh, just shit because they're just what did it say? Another one I got was, "What's the matter? Your crypto wallet empty all of a sudden, is it?"
Yeah, I
And I was
saw that.
like,
Right, right, right.
"Crypto? Flipping crypto? Was that hang on,
Oh,
fucking
I like this one.
crypto?"
I saw this a couple weeks ago when I was saying that the Russian Federation needs to be precisely defeated. It was my May 15th video on Instagram.
Yeah.
Um, one of the things that got said, after the 24th attack, remember we talked about the retaliation as the Russian word for murder? So there was one account that says, "Well, of course you would say that. You're a journalist. You're getting paid to say what you say. Soldiers fight because they believe in their country." The
What
fuck kind of
the fuck?
rationale is that? Would you like to look at my paycheck for journalism? I literally turned down a paying gig so that I didn't
Yeah,
have those
yeah.
trappings, so I could write what I needed to write on behalf of Ukrainian defender families that don't have a voice. They have people like me who go up there for no income and work to get that message out. And then you say that to me, I just laugh because I go, "Really? Shall we look at my bank account, Vlad? Немає,
Oh.
грошей немає зараз, і грошей немає." Like, but then there was the other thing that soldiers only fight because they believe it, as if there's no pay in it. And like none of
Yeah,
these
yeah,
things
it's
are realistic,
ridiculous.
and it's troll mentality. So it becomes kind of laughable. Which brings me to a really good improvement that happened this week. Remember the announcement that pay would go up?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, significantly
I
better.
don't it doesn't affect me, obviously. I mean,
Yeah, but
if
it
somebody's
helps our guys. Yeah,
if somebody's out
and
there
ladies.
on the Ukrainian side who wants to pay us £100,000 an episode like Tim Paul, I'm up for it. You up for it, Chris? I'm up for it.
I
If
am more
somebody
than
wants
okay to have
to
the resources. What I will not have, and I've had this already happen. I have seen many journalists get sandbagged by their news companies over insurance and things that they don't want to take risks on. So there are things that they institute, especially the further you get into those spheres. Like if you, I'm not going to name which newspapers or whatever else. In the cases I know is both television and online reputable print magazines. Um, they were literally there were things that they were not supposed to do for security reasons, or safety reasons, sorry. They're all in insurance and all that stuff that you and I have to do. We would just make a decision, that's all. We would simply go, "Wanna go? Yeah." Like, we talked about one this week. "You wanna go to Nikopol?" "Yeah." "Alright." We
yeah,
didn't have an editor that goes, "I'm sorry, you can't look, Chris. You cannot be going to Nikopol, you blat. You don't understand."
yes. The first thing we do is go, how much have we got to go to Nicapole with?
Yeah, it's pretty much how much what do we have on hand? What do we have
Yeah,
on hand to be able to go?
well, have we got enough to get there? And we'll work something out and get back by
Right.
I don't know, somehow. You know, it's like, yeah, I'd love to do more frontline reporting and get into it, but it costs
Absolutely.
money. You know, it's like, hold on,
Yeah,
it's not because I don't want to go, it's because
yeah.
I got a family
In
and I
fact,
got
our team
pay
that's
some
going to
bills.
Sloviansk, Luke and those guys are back. Luke and Corey are on their way. They'll be here next week. Um, Part of what happens is he goes back and gets into resource mode to draw in funds to get these missions
Yeah,
done,
you have
because
to.
it
Yeah,
takes
yeah.
a certain amount of money to get your vehicles, to get out to, to at least to Kharkiv, from Kharkiv down to Sloviansk, and you gotta be paying for hotels. I've already paid for the
Hotels.
studio. Thank you to our subscribers for making sure we have that. We have
Mm,
you've been here in the studio. This is what this is about.
yeah.
But to pay this and pay an apartment in Kharkiv, and pay an apartment in Sloviansk and pay an apartment in Odessa when we go down to do our films there. It adds up quickly. And as you know, hotels can be and Airbnbs can be really inexpensive here, $12 a night, $16 a night, something, you know. Um, but you know, CNN and those guys, well, they have a bureau here, but I mean, some of those other, at least that level, they don't approach it that way. They have infinite budget essentially to do what they want to do. We do not. We have a finite budget, but we have an organic reality
Loyal
that's actually
supporters.
better for you guys, right? And we have
We
loyal
do.
supporters. You guys have been so good to us. I'm gonna say again on behalf of Shaun and and not just you, Shaun, but, some of our friends who are on here. Thank you guys. We really enjoy this, and I said last night what Tom said to us, Tom Much said to us, that he felt the Substack audience was more, coherent in what they need to know about policy, that it's just a higher-minded, audience, more, you
Higher
know, just
level,
in
higher
tune.
caliber.
Yeah. Twitter is just a junk mess, you know. Facebook is a junk mess, you know.
It's an absolute mess, isn't it? It's just all
Cesspool.
it's a
And
cesspool of shit.
Zuckerberg has like a revolution going on or something behind the scenes. I saw the last couple of days. I mostly don't pay attention.
Oh, it's been a pleasure
And a
again.
Nazi drug addict is now a trillionaire.
It's been a pleasure again. I suppose we
My
ought to
god.
call it. It's a Saturday night. I better go and see my wife and have a
Well,
nice dinner.
we got one more segment item. Ready? EU
Oh,
opens
go
the
for it.
door EU opens the door for Ukraine.
Oh,
We will see in this
beautiful.
next yeah, this formal conference will take place in Luxembourg on June 15th, which is what, Monday? Am I
Yeah,
right? Yep, Monday.
yeah.
Um,
Monday.
and also there was the option of considering like a trial run NATO associate membership or something like that. I forget what the term was.
Oh,
Essentially, to allow Ukraine to come to Brussels and be at the table. Now, you and I said this with our discussion with Dimko, and I think this is the
yeah.
final thought for tonight is that NATO needs Ukraine more than ever. NATO
Oh,
needs
yeah.
Ukraine.
We've talked
So
about that
NATO
already.
has
Yeah,
to get out of its way and let this get going. So,
absolutely. No, I
all
don't
right,
think
my
it's a
friend.
given.
Yeah, man. So tell your wonderful wife I said hello and tell that wonderful cat wherever he's wandering around in the background, Loki, I said hello. And Starry, your wonderful
Will do.
older cat.
Yeah, he's probably crashed out somewhere. He's old, lost his
Very good,
faculties.
very good, very good,
Be pissing up something.
very good. Well,
All
thank
right.
you everybody for joining us. This conversation will be up online shortly if you
No
didn't catch
lucky
the entire
today,
conversation.
unfortunately.
And make sure that you check out the new interview that Shaun just posted on his account with Dimko. Great guy. Again, also
Yeah.
not only that, go get his book because it's a great read. I was skimming through it, and some of these I know these posts, these Twitter posts. So I was having a little bit like I didn't see what the book was like until I got home and it was open. So, oh, okay, I've seen some of these things. So
Yeah,
it's really
I
good.
like it because it's not one of those guys who's ex special forces who, it's like just a guy called.
Very normal
And
guy,
the
good
reason
guy.
I called the end because he's just said, one of the chapters in his book was, "You could just call me Dimko," and I thought, what a great. That's just him to the T. Him, his dog, his wife, and epitomizes Ukraine.
Zlotenko. You had that, remember?
I can't say that particular.
Zlotenko.
Zlotchenko.
There you go. You
I
got
just
it.
couldn't get my head around that when, it took me 3 or 4
Hey,
goes, and I was like, "That's not."
Errol, Olson said, "What is Sean's website again, Chris?"
Oh, ShaunPinner.com. It's pretty simple.
And my name is chrissampson.com, and that's the
Yeah,
message.
ShaunPinner.com, yeah. Yeah, it's just, I think that's what it is, yeah. It is, yeah, so we're gonna do a lot with that website. It's its early phase, and we're gonna do, hopefully some blogs on there, change it all up a bit, and use it as another conduit to get out to people. So it should be good.
All right. All right,
We're
my
going
man.
the right
I will see
way.
you soon. I'll be back in
Thank
probably
you.
30 minutes for a short bit about my articles today, and then we'll see you
Cracking.
in a
Next
few days,
Friday.
at least not next week. Слава Україні!
Sweet. See you later. Героям слава.
І пиздець Російській Федерації.